But, yep, the president delivering his State of the Union address, the response for the Republican Party, delivered by Senator Marco Rubio, who a lot of us hope will be a standard bearer for his party at some point in the future. But then, in addition to Senator Rubio's response, another exciting and dynamic and public-spirited and very constructive member of the U.S. Senate is delivering an additional response after the Republican response. It is designated the Tea Party response. That's going to be delivered by Senator Rand Paul, who's become a friend of this show, I'm proud to say. Senator Paul, thanks very much for joining us.
Glad to be with you, Michael.
Because I know today's a busy day. What do you say to those people who say to you, hey, Senator Paul, this is terrible. Why do you help the Democratic, the left-wing storyline that Republicans are so divided, they're so helplessly split between the Tea Party and the establishment that they can't even rally behind one voice for the party in responding to the president?
Well, I tell people, it's only fair. The president will probably speak twice as long. Between Marco and I, we probably still won't speak as long as the president will. So I think it's a good thing to get two responses. And to those who say it's divisive, I tell them, look, I had lunch with Marco today. We are friends. We are not exactly alike, but we're from the conservative wing of the party. And what you'll hear from him, I'm not sure exactly what his talk tonight will be, but you'll hear some similarities, maybe a slightly different personality. But the thing is I think it's for the good of the party. You'll find that both of us think that we're borrowing too much, that both of us think that government's grown too large, that the president thinks that government's the answer and not the marketplace. And it may be presented in slightly different fashion, but I don't think that any of this is divisive. I think most of that's media hype. What I would say is it's kind of lucky that we're getting attention for two responses, and there might be something he leaves out or I leave out that the other one makes a good point with.
I actually got two different emails, both of which had the same suggestion. They said, wait a minute, we should be celebrating the idea that Marco Rubio and Rand Paul are both responding. He says, because that's the ticket for 2016. The only question is who's running for the presidential slot and who's running for the vice presidential slot. Have you heard talk like that?
Oh boy, I don't try to push that kind of talk. That's scary talk. But what I would say is, when people say, "Oh, well, why is the Tea Party doing this?" The Tea Party is a pretty independent organization. I mean, there's 5 or 6 different Tea Parties. They actually squabble over one of them actually picking a speaker. The other thing is that really is what the Tea Party is. I always tell people the Tea Party started out as open mic night. You could show up. Whereas you went to a Republican meeting, no one ever asked your opinion, and there were never any issues discussed, and people just hung on to their local precinct chairmanship, and they kept outsiders out. The Tea Party was welcoming. It brought people. It was grassroots-oriented. It was issue-oriented. And really, it also started because we weren't always happy with Republicans. Under Bush, we doubled the debt. Under the current president, we're tripling and quadrupling it. But really, this problem of mounting debt and unbalanced budget's been going on Republican and Democrat. So there's a certain amount of chastisement for both parties, and that's why I think it's good to keep the Tea Party out there, because it keeps the Republican Party more conservative and more honest.
Senator, one of the things that I did just before you came on the show was we played some excerpts of Gerald Ford's State of the Union speech in 1975, and he was lamenting, President Ford, the levels of national debt, which he said were dangerous. You know what our national debt was in 1975?
Well, annual, it would have been under $20 billion, maybe.
Yeah, well, it was way under. It was like in terms of the deficit, but the total debt was $500 billion.
Now we double that in 1 year, and that is pretty scary, and that should scare everyone in America.
Well, it absolutely should, because we're obviously not moving in the right direction in that capacity. Is there anything that President Obama could say, and you'll be in the Senate chamber, I assume, listening to the president before you go on, is there something the president could say that could surprise you, inspire you, encourage you?
If he honestly said that he would take up entitlements and that he would work on entitlements, entitlement spending is 2/3 of the budget, entitlement plus interest. And that's what's growing rapidly, and it's squeezing everything else out. It's squeezing defense spending out, and it's squeezing out all the other discretionary spending that liberals like up here. So really you have to address that if you want to get any of these other items accounted for, but he keeps taking it off the table. Now, a year and a half ago, I had a meeting with 47 Republican senators and the president, and I asked him one-on-one, What if we were just to raise the age on Social Security gradually over 20 years and means test the benefits? That would make Social Security sound for 75 years and would go a long way towards fixing Medicare. And he nods his head, and in private seems to be pretty open to suggestions like that. But in public, he takes it off the table and plays the typical Democrat card, which is, oh, Republicans don't like old people.
Yeah, so in other words, what you're saying is that you and most of your Republican colleagues, I'm sure, would be willing to actually sit down and work constructively with Democrats if they'd take a look at the real drivers of our deficit and debt, which is this entitlements crisis.
Right, and what we ought to do is do it in a committee. We should have a committee that studies Social Security reform. We should have a committee that studies Medicare reform. This is why the voters are so unhappy and Congress has a 10% approval rating, because it doesn't appear as if we do anything between deadlines. We lurch from deadline to deadline, and then at midnight, the president says, oh, it's too late to do any real reform. Let's just put some patchwork together. And they put something together which just kicks the can down the road again.
Lanny Davis wrote an interesting column. He, of course, was an aide to President Clinton, where he said the president could really unite the country if he had just endorsed Simpson-Bowles.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem. The president and some Republicans are complaining about a $1 trillion sequester. Simpson-Bowles was $4 trillion. And here's what makes it even worse. If you were to freeze spending, they'd call that $9 trillion. So really, when you do a $1 trillion supposed cut, that's really a $7 or $8 trillion increase, because they're talking about cuts in the rate of increase, and the numbers are all upside down. There are no cuts. The $1 trillion cut is a cut in proposed increases.
Okay, you're speaking tonight. You're obviously going to be speaking about this debt crisis. New polling today that shows 65% of Americans disapprove of the job Barack Obama is doing on our deficit.
Where were they on Election Day?
A lot of them stayed home.
Yep.
And this is one of the things that has become increasingly clear, is a lot of people had a plague on both your houses idea to the two candidates.
Well, I think it's why we do need to think about something a little different in 2016, is Republicans need somebody who has an approach that can attract people in California, Oregon, Washington, New England. We need to attract more people. We need to open up the party and make it bigger. The old white man's party, it's no longer going to win elections at the presidential level. We need to show, I'm big on, and I've been talking with everybody I can, that we need to have outreach to the African American community, because all of the history of the Republican Party is the history of African Americans winning office. The first 50 years is us being for emancipation, abolition, voting rights. All of it is Republican history, and it's not being told anymore.
What about foreign policy? Would you like to talk anything about foreign policy in your talk tonight, answering the president?
One of the things I'll mention is that I think it's a really bad idea for us to be giving F-16s and Abrams tanks to Egypt. I think they're in danger of unraveling. I think that they need to reaffirm the Camp David Accords. And so one of the other things that I may not bring up in tonight's speech, but an amendment that I'm going to try to get a vote on in the near future, is I think President Morsi needs to publicly affirm Camp David, or they should not get another penny of our money.
Well, again, you've been fighting for this, and it seems to make a lot of sense to a lot of Americans. Do you think there's room to cut our foreign aid budget generally?
Yes, absolutely.
A popular position, but a correct position.
Yeah, we spend about $30 billion, and what I would do is I would start with the countries who have mobs in the street burning our flag and chanting death to America. I think it's just insulting, and it really isn't helping. See, we sent $60 billion to Egypt, but it didn't go to their people. It went to Mubarak. So when the people rioted and were unhappy and chafed under his militaristic rule, they sprayed them with tear gas, bought with foreign aid money, manufactured in Pennsylvania. So foreign aid doesn't always buy friends, it buys dictators, but most of them are corrupt and steal the money and angers the people. So foreign aid doesn't buy the friendship of foreign people, it buys the friendship of foreign leaders who mostly steal it.
What a concept, the idea that government spending money often doesn't deliver the intended results. Senator Rand Paul, greatly appreciate your leadership. Look forward to your speech tonight. Break a leg, as they say, and very glad to hear you just had lunch today with Senator Rubio. I also very much eagerly await his speech. When we come back...